So yes, so next we have Kusaladevi, Kusaladevi is she lives in Nottingham. She's now chair of Nottingham Buddhist Centre, but you might know her from her work in Karuna and Future Dharma Fund. So she's also an excellent fundraiser. And I'm glad to see that Kusaladevi has her hair showing. Kusaladevi's got the most wonderful hair, which I think is quite indicative of her personality, which is there's the Kusala aspect of skillfulness and of fundraising and generosity, and extremely generous to the Buddhist movement in India and in the UK, giving such a huge part of her life and her devotion to the Sangha and to the Dharma, spread of the Dharma. And she's also got this aspect of Devi, which I remember when Kusaladevi was coming here and training for ordination, and I remember talking to her about her sadhana and us having this whole conversation about flames. And I think when Kusaladevi is a Devi, she's not just any old Devi. She's definitely a fire Devi. And there's a real kind of lightness and brightness and creativity and energy there. She's also a very, very beautiful person to be around. I always have an experience of beauty when I'm around Kusaladevi, not only because she's very beautiful to look at, but also because her mind is very beautiful and her speech is very beautiful. And just being around her is a very, very beautiful experience. So yes, I'm very pleased that she's going to give a talk. And I think her talk is also focused on what she's learned around the lockdown. But I will let her speak for herself.
Thank you, Vajratara. Lovely introduction. Yeah, it reminds me, when you say about me having my hair down, when I had my ritual for becoming chair a few weeks ago, I decided to wear my red lipstick. That kind of felt like important to bring the Devi in that way. So yeah. Okay, start my timer. Good. So I'm going to talk a bit, about what I've learned in the last year, about what's valuable to me. So it is going to be quite a personal talk. And just to summarize really at the beginning, I think the two things that I've learned about are connection with others, which I'm sure we can recognize. I know when Vajratara mentioned that yesterday, there was a lot of resonance with that in the group. And also this idea of faith and letting go. So I'll say more about that later. And then at the end, I'm going to say a bit about the connection between the two of them and my going for refuge. So I need to set the context a little bit for you. So last February, I was looking for a job. I'd stepped away from working at Karuna. As Vajratara was saying, I'd worked at Karuna Trust for about 7 years, and I stepped away at the end of 2018. And I had this real sense when I was leaving that role of stepping out into an open space, and I had no sense of what was going to come next. So I had this year out of work, and I decided to move back to Nottingham. I'd been in Nottingham before that, and I'm from Nottingham. And one of my main reasons to move back to Nottingham was just to give back to the Sangha there. So I felt I'd got so much myself. I'd gained so much from being in contact with the Sangha in Nottingham, from finding the Dharma, the three jewels in Nottingham. And I wanted to sort of be around the centre to give back if I could. But I also decided that I wanted to work outside of Triratna. So at that time, I thought, I've been working at Karuna for a while, and I'm going to do something different. So this was just before the lockdown, I just started to put in job applications and had started to be invited to interviews. And then the lockdown came. So I was renting this new house. I didn't have any income. I was job hunting, and I'd spent almost all of my savings in this year off when I'd stepped away from Karuna and had this year of sort of open space and working out what was important to me. So I was suddenly in this position of needing a job quite quickly. So I got in touch with some of my friends in Triratna, and I was offered 2 jobs, one of them with Future Dharma, helping Buddhist centres to fundraise, particularly during the lockdown at a time of crisis. And the other one with the Buddhist Centre online, helping with their home retreats, their live events and publicity. So that's what I did. That's what I was doing. I was offered these 2 temporary jobs to step into during the lockdown. And at the same time, I was on the council in Nottingham, and I was meeting up with people in the Nottingham Sangha. So I've got a lot of very good friends in the Nottingham Sangha. I really, really loved working in team-based right livelihood again. So there was this sense of being part of a team, working together in a really difficult time to offer the Dharma to others. And that's what I was doing in both of these roles. And it felt very satisfying to be able to just sort of use my skills in whatever way I could to support other people at this time. And both of those roles seemed to sort of fit that very well. So yeah, this sort of dovetails into this first area that really stands out around what I value, and that's connection, friendship, community, and working together. I love working with other people. It's lovely actually having lots of people on screen here who I've either worked with in some way, like voluntarily or in jobs, or lived with. I'm thinking about Holly, who's here, and when Holly and I lived together, we used to enjoy unpacking the food shopping together in the kitchen. And there's something about, we always used to joke about it, but there's something about like doing that together and the sort of beauty of just sort of doing something together like that. So what I love about this is that sense of interdependence, so being shaped by and shaping each other when we work together. I think that's what we can do if we're really receptive, is be shaped by each other and help shape each other. And also this sense of just moving together towards what we most value. And, you know, sometimes that means supporting each other, sometimes it means inspiring each other, and sometimes it means challenging each other. And all of those aspects of friendship and connection, I really value. But I also love creating contexts for others to engage with what they most value. So in a way, a sort of sense of generosity, doing whatever's possible to support people to engage with their practice. And yeah, I have just really missed people this year. You know, that sense of talking, meeting for walks. It's so precious when we can do it, even, you know, there's a few friends on screen here who I've been able to have socially distanced walks with, and that's so precious. But it's only recently struck me, as Vajrayana was saying yesterday, how much I miss that physical presence of many of my friends. Yeah. I was really moved during the pandemic as well, during this lockdown period, about incidences of community and connection that I saw outside of Triratna. So in local communities and across the world, these acts of generosity, acts of solidarity. Yeah, just thinking about someone in the local community where I live here who cooks meals for anyone who needs them, either homeless people or just if anyone needs a meal, you know, she just cooks this vast amount of food and people can just turn up to this sort of tent that she puts up and she'll give it to them. Another person in this local community who puts cards and letters through doors telling people they're loved. You know, so many times on this Facebook group that I'm in part of this community, people say, oh, I've had this letter through my door. I don't know who it's from, but, you know, it's really beautiful. And everyone will say, oh, yeah, that's Mo. You know, she goes around and she puts these letters through people's doors. And yeah, mutual support groups, people buying each other shopping, this sense of like responsiveness to the need and a responsiveness to the collective rather than individuality. So that's the first area about what I value, this area of connection, community, friendship. So a little bit more about my year. So I was really happy doing these 2 jobs where I was working together with others and giving what I could to others. But I knew they were temporary, but I was very happy doing them. Just, I didn't need to think about looking for another job. And at the same time, I was on the Buddhist Centre Council in Nottingham. And obviously we were in slight crisis mode then, just responding to the pandemic, moving online, having to think about how we sort of responded to people in the Sangha, what they needed. And I'd been asked a little while before, if by a few people, if I ever wanted to be chair in Nottingham. And I'd said at the time it was a definite no. It wasn't because I didn't love the Sangha and want to respond to it, but it was because I didn't want that responsibility. But suddenly this really mysterious process happened last year. I started to listen to this quiet inner voice, which I've been getting more in touch with. And it was saying to me, you could do that, you could be chair. So we were in a position in Nottingham where we hadn't had a chair for 2 years. So yeah, this voice started to say, oh, you could do that, you might even enjoy it. And I was really surprised. It was like I had no idea that that voice was going to arise in any way, and it really shocked me when I heard it. But I did really trust it. And I think that's because since my ordination or a year or so before it, I'd been getting in touch more and more with this sort of inner quiet voice, this sort of inner quiet, deeper voice. It was actually one of the things that did lead me to leaving Karuna. Although I absolutely loved that job at Karuna, there was something that was sort of saying that I needed to step away from that. Manjavajra once described this as like an inner compass. And I really love that sort of image of an inner compass and sort of how do we tune into what our inner compass is doing. So we engaged in Nottingham with this process around me becoming chair, and I then became the chair, started as the chair in October last year. So yeah, this is the second area that I just want to talk a bit more about. And in a way, I think it's Shraddha. I think it's intuition and trust, but also letting go of control. So I'm not sure about all of you, but when I was asked what's of value, I just can find it really hard to articulate that. And I think this second area that I'm talking about, trust, intuition, Shraddha, this kind of touches into that. It's almost like that's how I work out what's of value to me, by this sort of quiet inner listening. But I also really value the process itself. So that process of listening in is also what I value. It's still quite mysterious to me, so it's not so easy to talk about. I think partly it is a bit of a listening to a sort of growing wisdom in my being. It feels like it comes from a different place than my head or my thoughts. And it isn't about what I think is best. It's not sort of conceptual. It's not about what I think is best or what others tell me is best. But it's a sense of more of being an individual and a sort of quiet trust, which I feel is based on my going for refuge. So in my new role as chair, I have had to integrate this part of me. So yeah, Punyamala was talking about this, like bringing all these aspects in. I think I relate it as well to the Devi aspect of me, which I'll say a little bit more later. But I can often ignore this part of me because it is quieter. And so it just needs a lot more space and time. And when I am working in particular, I can get into a particular sort of energetic engagement in work, which is, you know, it's great. It means I get a lot done, but it does leave behind this sort of more sensitive, quiet and intuitive part of me. Yeah, I was thinking about the reading this morning, really, you know, Bhanti's reading, like that aspect, that idea of like, we don't need to do, we can just sort of be in this greater mandala. So a few weeks ago, I was really struggling with like how to bring this part of me, and I'd got into my new role as chair. There was a lot to do. I was very busy. I was just sort of very busy, really. And I had a week off, and I realized that I needed to get in touch with this sort of quiet, more trustful part of myself. So I did a tarot reading. I did a tarot and an animal oracle reading. And I sometimes do this because I find, a bit like Pranagita was saying yesterday about those symbols that speak to us. For me, that's what this can do. When I do tarot readings or oracle readings, it's like there's these symbols and images which speak to parts of me that I can't really get to conceptually. And the particular card that stood out in that reading was this card. I'm just going to show you. So it's the cow animal oracle. So this beautiful sort of sensitive Highland cattle. So there's something about that it's like, oh yes, this sort of real gentleness, this real sort of slow pace, and a very sort of fine sensitivity or something. It really just captured something for me. So although I wouldn't say that that's the sort of image at the center of my mandala, it's certainly an image of what I need to allow and actively bring into my mandala. And yeah, Vajratara spoke about this sort of fiery aspect of my Deviness. So I think with the Devi part of my name, there are a number of parts that I need to bring in. So one of those is the more sensitive and refined. And one is the more sort of courageous and maybe even the more wild. So they're all parts that I'm trying to sort of bring more into my mandala. And I think this quiet inner listening and space can really help me with that. I've always loved being out in nature as well, particularly climbing big hills and mountains, that sense of the wild. And obviously I've hardly been able to do that in lockdown, living in the city. Luckily, I did get away to the Lake District last year in September and got to climb Helvellyn, which was very beautiful. But I also, because I've not been able to get that in the outer world, I've had to listen in a bit more for the wildness that's within me. So it's more that there's been this process during lockdown of like, oh, how do I listen for those aspects that I would usually rely on outer conditions for? How do I find them within? And this sort of inner listening feels like the fruits of my practice. It's like when I let go of control and wanting things to be a certain way, thinking that I can work things out, if I just sit back and I'm receptive and I trust and I'm open, then that's when this inner voice can arise. And that seems to be what happened about the process of becoming chair. I definitely didn't expect it or will it. It arose quite spontaneously. And the thinking about the aspects of my name, it's like, I think when Sadhanandi gave me my name, she said that the Devi can arise out of the Kusala. So because I can trust this basis of skillfulness, then the more mysterious, spontaneous aspect can arise out of that. And of course, in a way, being chair sort of really then relates back to that other element that's important to me of connection. And in a way, probably that's why that did arise as the right thing to do, this idea of connection, sangha, friendship. So yeah, obviously all of these, both of these two areas are in the context of my going for refuge. So it's like, I don't just value my own intuition or an inner voice out of a blind confidence. I value it because I recognize that it has the tiniest taste of freedom in there. And in a way, sort of through my practice over the years and going for refuge, I've tuned into a sense of what that flavor is like. What's the flavor of freedom for me? So I'm sure you can all relate to that. Like, we sort of resonate. We know when there's something that has a taste of freedom to it. So it's not that the role of becoming chair will necessarily lead to freedom on its own level, but it's a sense of trust and confidence in those conditions and intensity for me to learn, to grow, to engage. And also that responding to the Sangha is where I can be very wholehearted and very committed. It also is going to provide me, and already has, with plenty of opportunities to explore the nature of my own mind, and lots of opportunities for spiritual death, seeing through my wrong views, having to sort of learn, understand more about myself and let go of certain parts. I have to be really honest with myself about where my working edges are. And I think as well, with this inner quiet sensitivity, an ethical sensitivity can also arise from that, but also a strength of love and a strength of devotion. The word that came to me yesterday was like an inner anchor. So as well as an inner compass, yesterday after Vajratara's talk, just before the groups, I had some washing that I needed to hang out. So I was playing with like, oh, how do I stay in touch with the inspiration from that talk and make everything an offering? How do I see everything that I do as sacred? So how can I actually sort of hang this washing out as an offering and staying in touch with that sort of sense of it being sacred? And I felt really connected then again to this quiet inner place. And I thought, oh, it's like an anchor. It's like if I just remember, I can just keep sort of touching into that. It's always there. And yeah, the other area of connection, valuing connection and others. I don't just value that for what I can get from it, but in a way because I'm serving something really valuable. What I really love, this idea I'm really inspired by, is how can each of us move more towards our potential? And I love this idea of sort of a sense of really curiosity and interest, and really working out like what conditions are going to help people individually, help each of us grow, learn. Yeah, what conditions will support others to get a taste of freedom. So yeah, I think obviously that's meta, this idea of like seeing the potential in others and really wishing for it, and actively wanting to contribute towards the conditions for that to come into being for people. So when I wrote this talk, like I realized towards the end, oh, it's a bit like the public and private ordination myths, these two areas that have come out for me. There's this inner sort of, yeah, this inner sort of commitment, this anchor, this compass. And in a way, this sort of sensitivity, faith, letting go, opening up. But like, how do I stay in touch with what's important to me in that way? And then there's the outer expression of that. So how that's expressed to me, this connection, how I can serve the Sangha, the sort of public ordination aspect. And just finally, I think the other link between all the areas that I've learned about what I value is my relationship with Padmasambhava. So Padmasambhava is my yidam. And I do feel very sort of guided by Padmasambhava. One of the things that I love about Padmasambhava is the myth of sort of responsiveness. So the number of forms in which he appears. Obviously, we know about there's these 8 forms, but actually there's many more than that. They're just the ones that we know. And that's also what really inspires me about the Buddha's life. The fact that the Buddha was so responsive to whatever was needed, to whoever he met. So I feel like when I'm in touch with that inner compass and sort of a sense of letting go, I can just respond, just sort of respond from that place without having to think it through. And I'm also inspired by the image of the cremation ground. So something in me responds to a crisis or a challenge. I think taking on the role of the chair in the midst of the lockdown, when I've only been to the centre, the Buddhist centre, 3 times in the last year. I think there's probably something there that's inspired by Padmasambhava, this idea of not being shaken, a trust, letting go of control and just sort of responding to a need, but also stepping into difficulty. And, you know, Padmasambhava shows me again and again and again what really matters at the point of death is not my to-do list or how hard I work, it's my practice. It's those things that I value. So what I'm learning and having to keep remembering is how do I serve and respond without getting caught up in all those details. When I stepped away from Karuna at the end of 2018, I wanted to really connect with a part of myself that was being left out. And I'm now still working how to sort of bring that part in, because it has to be engaged in order for me to change. And the word that comes there for me again and again is wholeheartedness. And I think that's really interesting. You know, I'm only sort of mentioning the word mandala now, but obviously the mandala is a symbol of wholeness. And I do feel like it's so important that we're wholehearted in what we do, and that is what will help us transform on the path. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very, very much, Kusaladevi. It's a very, very beautiful talk. And what I really got a sense of in your talk is your ability to have, which is really quite special actually, to respond to others, respond to have that kind of vital, what Bhante calls a vital mutual responsiveness in communication and in communication with others, and wanting to support others to find their taste of freedom, but also to respond to your own inner voice and find your own taste of freedom and the flavor of freedom. And how, if you can do that really deeply, that would enable others to find it within themselves. And this whole image of the compass and the anchor, you know, that it's not easy actually always to find what's in the center of your mandala. You know, it's one of those things we can say very easily, but it's very hard to do. And I think you gave us some real clues about that as well, in terms of finding images, myths even, that we can allow into the mandala, even if we don't know what place. It doesn't really matter, in a sense. It's like, even if we don't know what place they're in, we know that they're important. You know, the wildness, the Highland cow. I like Highland cows. Whatever we're responding to in ourselves at the moment, to bring that in to the mandala, and how we respond to others. And it's interesting because often we think if we listen to that quiet inner voice, it's going to tell us that we need to, you know, give up all responsibility and become a hermit. You know, like, but actually, you listen to that inner voice, and it did tell you to take on a major position of responsibility, but from a very, very different place. And I think we can all learn from that as well, how to unite that sense of responsibility with that inner voice in the center and compass of the mandala. So again, so we could have a little clap for Kusaladevi, and then there's one more thing before we go into the tea break. So let's have it. So we have two friends next door, and they're highly extrovert. Poor old Pranagita is getting completely swamped by extroverts in Triratna Loka, and they just wanted to take part in the weekend. So they've actually recorded, Vandana Jyoti and Shantavadri have recorded a little message for you, which I'm going to share, and it's got an esoteric teaching in it. And the esoteric teaching has got to do with Shantavadri's socks.
So Shantavadri, what is it about Triratna Loka that you think we should be telling these people in order to inspire them and get them to think, oh yes, giving some money is just the thing to do? What shall we tell them?
What should we tell them? Well, I think we've done really well with these online retreats.
Well, they've been fantastic, haven't they?
Have you enjoyed them?
I've been amazed at how it is possible to make connections with people, even though, you know, where we are, little boxes on a screen. And the people have managed to bring themselves in so well.
Yeah.
It really has been marvellous to be part of that.
And loads of people are getting ordained still. Loads of women are getting ordained.
And do you know what? Loads of people are asking to be ordained as well, because that's one of my jobs here, is to sign up and write to people who are requesting ordination. So all of those things are continuing to happen.
Despite the lockdown and all of that.
Yeah. And here we are, really busy doing all of those things.
Yeah.
Signing people up to join the training for ordination process.
Yes.
Making sure that the people who come on retreat really understand what's going on. And then, of course, also we're talking to people on the phone in between times, aren't we? And just kind of keeping up to date with our friends and all that stuff.
Yeah, quite busy actually, quite a lot of things to do.
So, but,
yeah, what?
At the end of July, what's going to happen, we hope?
We hope. Everything crossed.
Everything crossed.
we hope we're going to open again.
Yeah, I do hope so.
I really hope so. September at the very latest.
Yeah.
But we hope by the end of July. So that's fab, and it'd be wonderful to have people back here, won't it, through the doors. Yeah. But we are a bit short of money as a result.
And if we open up at maybe by September at the latest, would that help financially?
I think it will make a difference. Pranagita's our treasurer. She was saying it will make a difference, but we're still looking to make a loss of about 20 grand this year.
Even if everything's full and everybody's on retreat.
Yeah, so we
20,000
is quite a lot to lose, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we do need donations, basically. Yeah. So that's what we're asking you.
That's where you come in.
That's where you come in. Yeah. If you feel inspired to help us in this kind of way financially, it will make a difference. And ideally, what would really, really help is if you could give something on a regular basis. A one-off donation's great, by the way. If you can afford a one-off donation, that is great. But if you could afford to give something less, but on a regular basis, the reason that's more helpful is because it enables us to plan. We know, what we're getting in, and we can plan.
So we know that there is an income that we can rely on, and we can build onto the programme.
Yeah. And I was thinking, because you remember when you and I used to do Karuna appeals and you used to suggest a certain amount. I was thinking of suggesting £20 a month. If you could afford £20, does that sound too much?
No. I was rather thinking the reverse.
What were you thinking?
I mean, for some people, of course, £20 a month is a considerable ask, and I realise that. But actually, many people now, if they are in work, can afford more than £20 a month.
Right.
If it's something that you feel is very, very valuable, and you can see, of course, that it's of value to others, not only to yourself.
Well, that's true.
So it's a question of thinking, well, it's only us and this community that can be giving that money. Nobody from outside the Buddhist field can be doing that, because they're not going to understand what we need the money for.
So are we saying that if people felt that they wanted to give more than £20 a month, that we wouldn't think that they were being ostentatious?
Absolutely not.
In fact, we'd be quite grateful.
We would be very, very grateful.
But I also want to say that even if £20 a month does feel too much, even a more modest amount, what you can afford that expresses your kind of inspiration, your feeling for the project, the inspiration for the project, whatever you can afford. No amount's too small. Just give what you can.
And it's your trust in the project and the process as well that's expressed in that giving.
Yes.
And I think that Vajratara is going to display one of the links so that it's easy for you to know how to do that.
Praniki,
thank you very much,
Thank
everybody.
you. And enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Brilliant.